Hello, I'm Wilson Bickford. Thanks for joining me today. I want to give you a little free art lesson, tips and techniques here on how to portray submerged rocks in your water to make the actual rocks look like they're underwater. Now I've got a little bit of a background started here just to give you an idea so we could put it within the context of a painting so you know how to fit this in and what it would actually look like. On my palette I have Van Dyke Brown, Burnt Sienna, and Titanium White. These are all Charvin brand paints. I'm going to be using a 2-inch primer brush. And I haven't put any dirt in. I want this to look like it's coming into shallows where you're seeing dirt through the water and some submerged rocks. So I'm going to put in the base dirt color underneath. I'm going to take some titanium white, a little bit of the Van Dyke Brown, and a little touch of the Burnt Sienna. Just something in my mind that makes a sandy dirt color. And I want to go a little bit on the darker side of things because I'm going to ultimately want the rocks to be a little bit lighter. So I'm just going to mix a flavor that I like here that in my mind looks like dirt or sand, depending on how you feel about it. And I'm going to cover this bottom portion of the canvas. We have to put the base tone in first underneath and then the rocks on top, and then I'll show you that it's all in the blending, how we actually push those underwater. So I'm going to bring this up and I'm going to softly blend this into the water. So I'm going to use a little bit of a crisscross stroke, just enough. Not much pressure. If need be, I can actually wipe the brush off if there's too much paint on there to do the blending. You can actually either pick up a clean brush or wash this one out or simply wipe it off. I'm pretty sure wiping it will be adequate enough. But I want to melt the edge between the blue and the brown so they just softly kind of melt together. It needs to be a gradual transition like the water's coming in. There's still going to be water over the dirt, but it's going to be transparent. You're going to be looking through the water into the dirt and the stones. So I want to blend those together fairly smoothly like that. Now this is going to look totally awful for the first few minutes. I need to put all the rocks in. The magic doesn't happen until I blend. I'm going to take my number 8 flat sable brush. And again, the brush isn't important. Get a brush that works for you. I could use a round brush at this point. This is one that's just not a really stiff bristle. And I want to mix up a lighter color. I'm mixing it right next to the dirt color because I want to achieve a lighter, brighter value. And I'm going to load the brush up like this to a chiseled edge. And I'm going to come in and just simply paint in some basic rock shapes. Notice I'm just twisting my wrist. You don't have to get too technical with these because we're going to simply come in and blur them, which pushes them underwater. And like I said, they're going to look very harsh at first to start out with. They're not going to look like they're underwater at all. What's going to happen is I'm going to give them a light blending. And see, I'm just kind of randomly putting them in there. Don't get too repetitive. Put them all in a row like ducks swimming in a row. Basically, what it amounts to is the less you think about it, the better. That way you don't get in the rut of making anything too precise and the same. It needs randomness. So I'm just filling it up, make it look like a really stony bottom. Leave dark. Notice there's dark in between each and every rock though. Don't clutter it up so they're all touching. You want some space in between. As I go higher on the canvas, I'm going to do the shapes a little smaller, and you'll see I don't reload quite as often. And by using less paint on the brush, they're getting a little fainter, and I'm making them smaller. So that's adhering to both art principles that you've always heard about, the two perspectives, aerial perspective and linear perspective. Aerial perspectives means they're getting softer and lighter as they go away. And linear perspective means they're looking a little smaller as they're going farther away. These are getting out into the deeper water where you actually start losing sight of them. I'm going to come back one final little touch here. I'm going to take a little more white into that and a little more sienna and just get a little bit lighter value even, something a little lighter and brighter. And on some of these I'm just going to make them a little lighter, because each stone is going to be facing the light source, which is the sun obviously, but it's going to be facing the light source at a different angle. Some will be getting a little more light, some will be getting a little less. So I like to break it up, and usually if I put lighter ones I put them towards the middle of the canvas because that's where we want the viewer to be drawn, is more towards the middle of the painting. So I just put a few of these in like that. The key is not using too much paint. There's not a lot. It's not a real thick application of paint. I touch the brush down, I swish it, turn it, and there's just a little bit of enough paint there to do the job. I'm going to go back to this large brush, or you could use a fan brush, just a boar bristle fan brush like this. Just something you can get a light touch with. I'm actually going to use this dirty brush, just wipe it off a little bit. The key is just a very light grazing stroke. And I'll just do this 1/2. Watch how hard this edge is, and then watch how this one kind of blurs out of focus. See how it pushes them underwater? All you're doing is just taking the edge off those rocks and softening, making them a little bit blurry. It's easy to overdo it and blend it to death, and then you end up with just no rocks at all. You want to use just a very light touch. See how that blurred those out of focus, pushed them under? To further enhance that, I'm going to take my palette knife, which I've got this Creative Mark S59, which is typical for the wet on wet type of painting method that you're probably familiar with. I'm going to pull out a little bit of white. I'm going to cut off just a little sliver on that blade. And where I've got some wave lines and sparkles in the distance, I'm going to continue these down over the top. And you'll see that as I put these over the top of the rocks, it tends to push those under. Because we're actually putting a surface on the top of the water now, and it makes it feel like you've got a surface on top of the water and the rocks are underneath. So it kind of just enhances that illusion that we're trying to create. Now, is that pretty cool or what? That's a great technique to know about. People look at that and they scratch their head and say, how in the world did you make those rocks look like they're submerged? It's that easy. It's all in the blurring and the blending of them, but go easy on that. Try that out. I think you'll enjoy it. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you next time.